Hello everyone, once again welcome back to our class. So today I have decided to discuss a random topic from chapter 9, Fiscal Policy and its measures. Okay, so let's get started. Now what is a fiscal policy? It is a policy of the government. Fiscal policy is relating to government expenditure on public works like construction of roads, bridges, railways, improvement in health centers, education sectors, etc. And revenue taxation policy. Revenue taxation policy means we know that the government needs to collect all kind of taxes, and once they are done with the collection of taxes, there are various ways to mobilize, to utilize it, to use it, and that is revenue or taxation policy. Okay, to achieve certain economic objectives like rapid economic development, reduction in economic inequalities, promoting capital formations, etc. Capital formation means increase in investment. Okay, so I repeat again, when we talk about fiscal policy, it is a policy of the government. It is relating to government expenditure and revenue policy to achieve certain economic objectives like rapid economic development, reduction in economic inequalities, promoting capital formations, etc. Okay, so that is the meaning of fiscal policy. Now, what is the main aim of fiscal policy? It is aimed at influencing aggregate demand to curb the situation of excess demand and excess supply. Now, what is aggregate demand here? Aggregate demand means the total demand of goods and services in our economy. Okay, excess demand means when demand is greater than supply. That means, in the simplest term, when people are demanding more goods and services but there is shortage of goods and services in the market. That is excess demand. And when we talk about excess supply, it means supply is more than demand. That means there are more goods and services available in the market, but there's less buyers. Okay, I hope that is clear, right? Okay, next. Now this is the main part. Fiscal policy is again further classified into contractionary policy and expansionary policy. Okay, now first we will discuss contractionary policy, and once you understand contractionary policy, you'll easily understand expansionary policy as well. So listen it carefully. Okay, so first thing that you have to remember here is government used to adopt contractionary policy during the times of excess demand, or in order to solve the problem of excess demand, because we know that excess demand means when demand is greater than supply, which means people are demanding more goods and services than what is actually available in the market. Now, why people are buying or demanding more goods and services in the market? It is because they have more money with them. Okay, so if they keep on spending their money on goods and services, then it will lead to inflation. That means rise in price level. Therefore, in order to solve that situation, the government usually adopted contractionary policy to solve the problem of excess demand. Okay, so we will discuss one by one. Point number one is expenditure policy. Reduce expenditure. Okay, so here the main motive of a government is to reduce expenditure of the public, to reduce excess demand. So what they will do is the government will reduce expenditure. Government will decrease expenditure on public activities like construction of roads, bridges, railways, or they will spend less on health, education sectors, or they will even stop giving big projects to the public, so that once they reduce the expenditure, the disposable income of the public will fall. The disposable income of the public will fall. Disposable income here is the income left with the public for spending on goods and services after paying taxes. Okay, so like I said, when government decrease their expenditure, disposable income of the public will fall. and once disposable income of the public fall, consumption expenditure will automatically fall and economy will be back into equilibrium. Okay, so that is the first point. Point number 2 is revenue taxation policy increase taxes. Okay, here since the government is trying to bring back the economy into equilibrium by reducing the purchasing power of the people, what they will do is the government will increase taxes, and once they increase taxes, the disposable income of the public will fall, and once the disposable income of the public falls, consumption expenditure will again fall and economy will be back into equilibrium. Okay, for example, let's say last year the government were imposing tax of 10% on my income, which means I have 90% of my income to spend on goods and services. But this year the government increased the tax rate to 30%, which means only 70% of my income is left with me to spend on goods and services. Therefore, if the government increased the tax rate on my income, then my disposable income, my purchasing power to buy goods and services will also fall, and when that falls, consumption expenditure will fall and economy will be back to equilibrium. Okay, that is point number 2. Now point number 3 is public borrowing, increase it. Okay, so here, like I have mentioned, the government motive is to reduce excess demand. The government motive is to reduce public spending. So in order to mop up, or in order to take away the money from the public, what the government will do is the government will start borrowing from the public by issuing their financial instruments, by selling off their financial instruments like shares, bonds, debentures, etc. to the public, and once the public start buying those shares, bonds and debentures from the government, they will be left with no money at all, and in that way their consumption expenditure will also fall and economy will be back into equilibrium, and that is public borrowing. Okay, last, deficit financing, decrease it. Here, deficit financing means printing or issuing of currency notes. Decrease it, what does that mean? Since here the government motive is to reduce public spending, what the government will do is they will print less currency notes. And when the government print less currency notes, then less money will be available with the government for spending, and when government spend less money, then disposable income of the public will also falls, and when disposable income of the public falls, consumption expenditure will also fall and economy will be back into equilibrium. Okay, so this is all about contractionary policy. I hope that is clear, right? Okay, next, expansionary policy, excess supply. So here, the first thing that you have to keep in mind is, under expansionary policy, the government motive is to solve the problem of excess supply. Excess supply means when supply is more than demand. That means when goods and services are when more goods and services are available in the market, but there is less buyers in the market. And why does that happen? Because people have less money with them, and if they have less money with them, they will buy only less goods and services. Okay, so that is excess supply. Now, since there is excess supply in the market, the government, in order to solve this problem, what they will do is they will try to increase the government spending so that more money will be left with the public, so that the public can spend those money on goods and services. Okay, so point number 1 is expenditure policy, increase expenditure. So here, what the government will do is the government will increase expenditure on public works like construction of roads, bridges, railways. They will spend more money on health facilities. They will spend more money on education sectors, etc. Or they will even start giving big projects to the public so that more money will be in the hands of the public. And if more money are in the hands of the public, the disposable income of the public will rise or will increase. And when the disposable income of the public increase, consumption expenditure of the public will also rise and the economy will be back into equilibrium. Okay, point number 2 is revenue policy. Taxation policy, decrease taxes. Okay, so here it is just opposite to contractionary policy, revenue policy, increase taxes. Here it is decrease taxes. Why? Because you see, the government decided to reduce taxes on the public. Now, when the government reduce taxes on the public, more money will be left with the public, that is, disposable income will rise, and when more money is left with the public, consumption expenditure of the public will rise. Okay, taking an example of the first one, let's say last year the government were taxing 20% on my income. That means only 80% of my income is left with me for spending. But this year, the government reduced the tax rate from 20 to 10%. Now I have 90% of my income with me to spend on goods and services, isn't it? So that means my disposable income, my purchasing power will increase, which means I can spend more money on goods and services. Therefore, consumption expenditure will rise. So under revenue policy, what the government will do is the government will reduce tax rate, and once they do that, the disposable income of the public will rise, and when disposable income of public rise, consumption expenditure will also rise. Okay, point number 3 is government borrowing, reduce it. Okay, here the government will be discouraged to reduce government borrowing from public so that more money will be left with the public to spend on goods and services, which means the government should be discouraged to borrow from public so that more money will be left with the public to spend on goods and services. Okay, and lastly, deficit financing, increase it. Okay, here what the government should do is the government will print more currency notes, and once the government print more currency notes, the government will have more money in their hands to spend on public, and once they spend more money on public, the disposable income of the public will rise or will increase, and when the disposable income of the public increase, consumption expenditure will also rise and economy will be back into equilibrium. Okay, so that's all from expansionary policy. So see, my dear students, like I've mentioned even in the first part, once you understand contractionary policy, then expansionary policy is just opposite to contractionary policy. Okay, so listen it carefully, go through again and again, and if there's any doubt, you can ask me anytime. Okay, thank you.